Humanity's desperate fight for survival takes a mysterious turn when the alien force begins sending coordinates to Earth. A team of explorers, following the cryptic message, disappears without a trace. The coordinates lead to something far darker than anyone could have imagined, leaving humanity to question their next move. Why is it sending coordinates? Commander Jensen muttered under his breath, staring at the strange sequence of numbers blinking on the screen. The coordinates were being transmitted through Earth's most secure channels, but this time there was no encryption. No attempt to hide its intent. It was as if the alien force had deliberately made sure they could see it. "We don't know." "Sir," Lieutenant Vega responded, her eyes glued to the incoming data stream. "But we've checked the signal 3 times. It's real. It's not some mistake. It's coming directly from the alien ship." Jensen's heart raced. The last few weeks had been a blur of desperate defense, futile attempts to fight back against the invincible alien weapon hovering over Earth. The cities were in ruins. Millions were dead. Yet, despite the destruction, the aliens hadn't finished the job. They had done enough to break humanity's resolve, but now they were sending coordinates. "Whoever's left," Jensen said, his voice steady despite the dread building in his chest. "Get me a team ready to go." "You want to send a team? To those coordinates?" Vega asked, disbelief creeping into her voice. "We don't even know what they lead to." "This could be another trap, Commander." Jensen turned to face her, his gaze hard. "I'm not waiting around for them to wipe US out completely. If they want us to go somewhere, we go. We're taking the fight to them." Vega hesitated, glancing at the screen one last time, the coordinates still blinking like a grim invitation. She nodded slowly. "Understood, sir. I'll get the team ready." An hour later, a small fleet of transport ships was prepared, ready to follow the alien coordinates to an unknown location. The crew was composed of the last remaining soldiers, engineers, and scientists who had survived the first wave of attacks. They were a ragtag group, broken in spirit but not in resolve. They were all that stood between humanity and extinction. As the ships lifted off from Earth, Jensen sat in the lead vessel, staring out at the swirling vortex of energy that had once been Earth's atmosphere. The alien ship, still hovering above them, cast its dark shadow over the planet, a reminder of everything humanity had lost. "The coordinates are taking us farther than we expected," Captain Hughes said, his voice tense as the ship glided through space. "We're going to the edge of the system." Jensen's fingers gripped the armrest, his mind racing. "What do you mean, farther?" "Sir, the coordinates, they're not just pointing to a location in space. They're leading us to something big," Hughes explained, a touch of awe in his voice. "It's like they want us to find it. Whatever this is, it's not a ship. It's something else." Jensen frowned, watching as the stars ahead grew more distant, the deep blackness of space stretching out like an endless void. They were heading toward the unknown. As they neared the coordinates, something shifted in the fabric of space itself. The readings on the ship's instruments began to fluctuate wildly, the sensors picking up massive gravitational anomalies. The closer they got, the more unstable the readings became. "Commander," Hughes said urgently, "we're approaching the point of no return. These readings, this isn't normal." Jensen's mind raced. "Get us closer. We're not backing down now." Moments later, the ship emerged from the darkness of space into an area filled with a strange, unnatural light. The stars around them seemed to distort, bending in ways that defied all understanding of physics. Ahead, there was an immense structure, unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a massive spherical object, covered in shifting metallic layers, that pulsed with a faint, eerie glow. The ship's instruments went haywire. The object ahead was radiating energy, immense and uncontrollable. It was like a black hole, but it wasn't. It was something much worse, an artificial construct, alive with an intelligence that sent shivers down their spines. "Get us out of here!" Vega shouted from the comms, panic in her voice. But before anyone could react, a powerful beam shot out from the object, striking their vessel with such force that it rocked violently. The lights flickered and the console screens began to malfunction. Status. Jensen barked, gripping the armrest as his body was thrown against the seat. "Impossible," Hughes whispered, his voice strained with disbelief. "The ship. It's absorbing our power. We're losing everything." Just as the words left his mouth, everything went black. Silence enveloped them, and then they vanished. The ship along with its crew disappeared without a trace, leaving nothing but the emptiness of space. Back on Earth, Commander Jensen's last transmission flickered in the command center for a brief moment before going silent, and that was before Earth even responded. The silence of space was deafening, a vast, cold void that swallowed everything, including the last traces of humanity's final stand. On Earth, the absence of the fleet was felt immediately. The last ships that had attempted to follow the alien coordinates vanished, leaving no wreckage, no transmission, nothing. It was as though they had never existed. The alien force, watching from above, remained eerily silent. Earth was left in a state of paralyzed uncertainty, its future hanging by the thinnest thread. Back in the command center, the screens flickered with static, the comms channels now completely dead. Commander Jensen and the remaining survivors had been on that mission, but now no one knew what had happened. No one could make sense of the last communication, the desperate urgency in Jensen's voice. The coordinates they had followed, now blank on every display, were all that remained of the mission. Vega stared at the screen in disbelief. She couldn't shake the image of the massive sphere that had swallowed their last hope. The coordinates had led them to something far worse than they had anticipated. No one could have expected it to be a weapon of such immense power, so alien in design, so complex that it defied all known science. And now it was gone. We have to assume the worst, Hughes said, his voice solemn as he stared at the black screen. His hand trembled as he keyed in a few commands, trying to access any remaining data. But the system was unresponsive. "The worst is already here," Vega muttered, her voice hollow. "They're gone, and we're just waiting." The tension in the room was unbearable. It wasn't just the loss of the fleet that weighed on everyone's mind. It was the quiet, ominous calm that the alien ship had left behind. They had shown no signs of hostility for weeks, but now, after the disappearance of the last team sent to follow the coordinates, it was clear that Earth was no longer in control. "Commander," came a new voice, one of the engineers, her words cutting through the silence. I think I found something." Vega turned to her, eyebrows raised. "What do you mean, something?" The engineer, whose hands were shaking as she typed into the terminal, glanced up, her eyes wide with fear. "It's the coordinates. They were a message, a warning. Not a trap, but something else." Hughes walked over to the console, looking at the screen. "Explain yourself," he said. "What do you mean, a warning?" The engineer pointed to a line of code on the screen, her voice trembling. The system was tracking the movement of the fleet. Before it vanished, it intercepted something encrypted. A map of sorts, but it wasn't designed to guide. It was designed to track? Jensen's words echoed. In Vega's mind, the last message he had sent. "It's tracking us. Vega's blood ran cold. "Where is it leading us?" she asked, even though she already feared the answer. "It's not just a map of our location." The engineer continued, her voice quiet but urgent. "It's a countdown." The room went still, every person in it feeling the gravity of the revelation. "A countdown to what?" Hughes asked, his voice strained. The engineer's fingers hovered over the keys, her face pale. She pressed a few more buttons, bringing up a visual representation of the coordinates. The display flickered as it expanded, showing a sequence of complex data points like a time-lapse, a signal for something much larger. It wasn't just a map of their movements. It was calculating the Earth's potential for destruction. "It's sending the coordinates to Earth," she said, voice cracking. "It's preparing something massive. We're running out of time. Whatever it is, it's coming for us. And we're not prepared." The sense of helplessness was suffocating. There had been no plan for this. There was no backup, no contingency. The alien ship had made its move. Now Earth was trapped in a game with an opponent it couldn't even comprehend. "We need to regroup. We need to find out what the coordinates mean," Vega said, urgency creeping into her voice. "Do we have any surviving ships? Any communication?" "No." The engineer said, "We're alone now, and the alien ship. It's doing something." The data flow suggests an energy buildup massive, concentrated, and increasing. "It's like the coordinates were just the beginning." "What kind of buildup?" Hughes asked, his tone growing more frantic. "It's like a precursor." The engineer replied, her voice filled with dread. "But I can't decode the full message. The system's still too fragmented. But, if I'm right, Earth is the target." A chill ran through the room. The last remaining defenses on Earth, those few facilities, those small but significant pockets of resistance, were all they had. They had nothing left to lose, and yet, in the face of the alien threat, nothing they did seemed to matter. Then, "We fight," Vega said, her voice hardening with resolve. "We find a way to turn this around. We cannot wait for it to destroy us. We need a plan." "We don't even know what we're up against anymore," Hughes said, shaking his head. "They've taken everything we know and turned it on its head. We can't keep fighting something we can't see, something that's always one step ahead." Vega turned to face him, her eyes steely. "We fight because it's all we have left. If we let them take everything, there's nothing left to fight for." The room was silent for a moment. Every person, every officer in that command center felt the crushing weight of the situation. They were running out of time. The alien ship was poised above them, and the countdown had begun. And yet, despite the fear, despite the overwhelming sense of doom, there was a spark, a determination to resist, to survive. They might have been alone, but humanity was not finished. "Not yet. We prepare for the worst," Vega said, her voice steady. "But we fight until the end." And with that, they set their course for the unknown. Whatever lay ahead, humanity would face it together, one last stand, one last chance, to reclaim their world from the grip of the unknown. The countdown had begun. But Earth had yet to respond. The command center was quiet, a tense hush hanging in the air as the crew tried to make sense of the information flooding in. The alien ship still hovered above Earth, a silent presence that felt heavier with each passing moment. The coordinates they had received had led them to nothing. No message, no new leads, just emptiness, a terrifying silent void. Commander Vega stood at the front of the command center, her eyes scanning the reports on the console. It had been 2 days since the fleet had vanished, and with each hour, their chances of recovery diminished. The alien ship seemed content to watch, to wait. It didn't need to strike again. Its presence was enough to keep the entire planet on edge. "We've received no further transmissions from the ship," Lieutenant Hughes said, his voice tight with frustration. "Nothing. It's like they're waiting for us to make the next move." Vega clenched her jaw, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the console as she processed the data. "It's almost as if they're playing with us," she muttered. "Everything they've done has been designed to break us psychologically. First the coordinates, then the complete silence. We need to figure out what they want. Why Earth? We're running out of time, Captain Harris said, his voice carrying this weight of the world. The remaining survivors, the pockets of resistance, we can't keep them in the dark for much longer. If we don't do something now, we risk losing them completely. Vega exhaled sharply, leaning over the console. What's our status? On the last known location of the fleet? Hughes adjusted the display, bringing up the coordinates they had been following for the last several hours. Nothing. The fleet's disappearance doesn't make sense. There's no wreckage, no trace of what happened. It's like they just vanished. Vega rubbed her temples, trying to keep a lid on the frustration boiling inside her. They had followed the coordinates, thought they were making progress, but now the fleet was gone, and they were no closer to understanding what the alien force had done. Whatever had happened out there was beyond their comprehension. Sudden ping from the communication console snapped her out of her thoughts. The message that appeared on the screen was brief, a single line of text. You are not the first to fall. A shiver ran down her spine as the words settled in her mind. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. They weren't the first to be targeted by this force, and they likely wouldn't be the last. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just about Earth. This was part of something larger, something beyond their understanding. They were merely pawns in a game they didn't know how to play. Who sent this? Vega demanded, her voice sharp. It came from the ship, Hughes replied, his voice tinged with confusion. It's not a typical communication. It's more like a warning, like they've been here before. Where else? Vega asked, her thoughts racing. Where have they been before? The message? It's too vague, Hughes said, scanning the data quickly. It's referencing other civilizations, but it doesn't specify which ones. It's almost like a prelude to something. A prelude. The word echoed in Vega's mind. The alien ship had been acting as though it was preparing for something bigger than Earth. It was a subtle shift, but she felt it. Earth wasn't their final destination. Earth wasn't the prize. She turned sharply toward Harris. We've been operating under the assumption that we're facing an isolated attack. What if this is part of a larger campaign? What if we've been targeted because we're next on a list? Harris blinked, his expression thoughtful. A campaign? You think they've been doing this across the galaxy? Attacking planets like Earth? Vega nodded. It makes sense. If they've been here before, it's possible they've wiped out other civilizations in the same way. They didn't just send coordinates. They've been tracking us, testing us, breaking us slowly. This ship, this force, it's been hunting for planets to eradicate. We need to know more, Harris said, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. We need to understand the pattern. If they've done this before, then there must be a way to stop it, a weakness. Vega's mind raced. There had to be something they could use against them. There had to be some detail they had missed. A vulnerability. The alien ship may have seemed invincible, but if it had been used against other planets, surely they could find a way to turn the tables. Suddenly, the communications officer called out, his voice urgent. Commander, new data coming in. It's the coordinates again. Vega's heart skipped. What do you mean? We've been over those coordinates 100 times. I don't know how, but the coordinates have changed. They're leading us to a new location, but it's different this time. It's not like the last ones. This is deeper into space. Vega's pulse quickened. What's at this new location? The officer hesitated. I'm not sure, but the readings are enormous. Whatever's there, it's big. Too big. Vega exchanged a look with Harris. It's a trap, she said, a knot forming in her stomach. They're luring us in. And this time, they won't be taking prisoners. This could be it then, Hughes said quietly. "We either go now or we risk losing everything." Viga's gaze turned to the vastness of space on the screen. The coordinates were staring back at them, glowing with an almost taunting finality. The countdown had begun. "Prepare the fleet," she said, her voice resolute. "We're following them." As the last of the fleet assembled, Viga stood at the helm, her hands clenched. They were about to venture deeper into the unknown, and every instinct told her this would be their final mission. The alien force was playing a game, but this time they had a choice whether or not to keep playing, and this time they were not going to vanish without a fight. The fleet moved forward, following the coordinates, ready to face whatever awaited them. But what they didn't know was that they were walking straight into the heart of the alien campaign, and that was before Earth even responded. The fleet moved into the darkness of deep space, the coordinates leading them farther from Earth than they'd ever traveled before. The hum of the engines was the only sound that filled the command center, a stark contrast to the quiet tension gripping every officer aboard the ships. The unknown lay ahead, but it wasn't just the uncertainty that plagued them. It was the weight of the alien force still hovering above Earth, a constant reminder of how vulnerable they were. Commander Viga stood at the front of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the display screen. The coordinates had led them to a new sector, one that seemed to pulse with unnatural energy. Whatever lay ahead was not just a trap, it was a test. The aliens had been drawing them in, manipulating their every move, but this time Viga wouldn't make the same mistake. She knew that Earth's survival depended on one final, desperate push. "How long until we reach the new coordinates?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension gnawing at her insides. "About 15 minutes, Commander," replied Captain Harris, his fingers flying across the console. "The readings are off the charts. There's something massive out there, but we can't pinpoint exactly what it is. It's unlike anything we've encountered." Viga's thoughts raced. The alien force had already wiped out Earth's defenses, had already shown its power, yet it was still playing games. What were they really after, and why were they sending coordinates? Was it part of a larger plan, or were they toying with humanity? The more questions she asked, the less she understood. "Commander, we're picking up strange energy readings," Lieutenant Hughes called out from the comm station. "Whatever it is, it's not just a weapon. It's something else. The words died in his throat as the ship rocked violently. The screens flickered, and a low rumble reverberated through the hull. The entire fleet was thrown into disarray, the alarms blaring as the lights dimmed. What the hell was that? Viga shouted, gripping the edge of the console to steady herself. "It's coming from the coordinates." Harris yelled. "We've been hit directly. Something massive just exploded." Viga's heart skipped a beat as she looked at the tactical map. The entire sector where the coordinates had led them was now glowing with intense, blinding light. But it wasn't just light, it was the pulse of energy, a wave of destruction that seemed to reach out and consume everything in its path. Before anyone could react, the fleet was hit again, this time harder. The ship shuddered violently, and the monitors went black. The overwhelming force of the blast sent waves of shock through the remaining vessels, and within moments, the command center was plunged into silence. "Report," Viga demanded as panic began to spread. "We're losing power," Harris said, his voice strained. "The shock wave from whatever just detonated, it's frying our systems. Shields are failing. Engines are offline." "This is it," Hughes whispered, his voice shaky. "This is the heart of their power. We're too far in. We can't escape." Viga's eyes darted around the room. The fleet was disintegrating. The alien force had set the perfect trap. The coordinates, the lure, they had led them straight to the heart of the storm. "Commander," Harris said, looking out at the vast, glowing expanse ahead of them, "they've won." We've been led into their trap. But Vega didn't let despair take over. She looked at the shattered remnants of the fleet, at the debris slowly drifting in space, and her resolve hardened. The aliens might have been in control for now, but humanity wasn't finished. Not yet. We may be out of time, Vega said, her voice unwavering. But we're not done yet. Not while there's still breath in our bodies. We will fight. And as the energy pulse from the alien weapon surged toward them again, Vega prepared for one last stand. It wasn't a battle they could win with firepower. But if they were going to die, they would die fighting, because that was the one thing the alien forces didn't understand. Humanity's will to resist died as the final blast came. They vanished into nothingness, leaving nothing behind but a single question. Was this the end of Earth, or the beginning of something else?